So this is where we had left off with yesterday. And one of the aspects that I want you to keep in mind, when do you think was the first time you were introduced into the term bacteria? Probably fourth grade, fifth grade, probably by the time sixth grade had rolled around, probably had heard of this term. Others may have been amoebas, protozoans, uh, maybe viruses. That I maybe yes, maybe no. Um, but at that time, and not that you can remember that far back, but do you think when you learned it at that time that, oh my gosh, we're learning about bacteria. All bacteria are bad. Now, this is elementary, not now when you're sophomores, but 5 years ago. Do you think when you were introduced to that term bacteria that these are bad things? Probably, okay? But from what we know now and what you've seen in this video from this doctor slash surgeon, okay, are all bacteria bad? And of course the answer is no. So what are some aspects that we talked about in class that bacteria do for us? We didn't write it down. Well, and that said that in the video, that's true too. It helps fight off other diseases or germs. What might they do for us? Exactly, but how? You're right, but how does it help your digestive tract? Rather than speeding up, it keeps it from going too fast. So if that is the case, what's not building up in your large intestine? Well, bacteria is already there. Remember, it's that term that we said everyone goes through, but no one would really ever want to talk. And I don't blame you. It's one of them things. Yeah, diarrhea. It's natural to not want to talk about it, but it's also natural to go through that. It's unfortunate, but why do you suppose? So if we're getting rid of the bacteria that we need, or if we're getting that salmonella from your pork loin or your Taco Bell, or it was chicken. So if you have all them salmonella building up in your large intestine, why would that be an advantage to have diarrhea? Believe it or not, it is an advantage to have diarrhea. Why would that be? It cleans you out. You help get rid of them. But there's also going to be a side effect to that. If you are losing lots of water, just like if you're sweating, you're also going to become very dehydrated. Okay? There's actually a kind of a unique commercial on TV. I've noticed it a few times, and it shows this dad, a younger dad, who is obviously feeling very distressed. He's not feeling well. He reaches into the fridge and pulls out this children's drink. Starts with a P. I think you said it. Yes, Pedialyte. Okay? So if it's gentle enough for kids to digest, chances are, obviously, we can do that too. So why may that be an advantage to drink that Pedialyte? If it's soft on your digestive tract, which it is, it's going to help you get the nutrients and the electrolytes that you need. Okay? So yes, there's advantages to having that diarrhea to help clean out your system. And for perhaps your grandparents, they probably go through this process once every probably 5 years since they maybe turned 60. A colonoscopy, okay? Unfortunate thing that has to be done is you got to get cleaned out for that. I don't know why. I'm not a doctor. But what happens is you will have to take a type of substance that will speed up your digestive tract, okay? So whether it's you get a more clear picture would be my guess. So it might be, let's say, uncomfortable talking about that, but probably within the last 25 years, life expectancy has gone up quite a bit because people are more open to going and having that process done. Okay? So if it's a very common form of colon cancer, if there's a way to prevent that, chances are you're going to do that. I would think so. Rather than having that cancer spread throughout your body by the time you're 65 or 66, you may be able to add on another 20 years, maybe 30, on to your natural life. Well, we would hope so. I think doing nothing is perhaps the worst thing. People probably growing up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s probably never talked much about it. It just wasn't one of those things to where it was not part of a common conversation. But now it probably is. Okay? And probably isn't so much for your parents yet. I wouldn't think it would be for probably another, within the next 10 years, maybe. And it could be such thing your family physician or family doctor is going to prescribe that procedure because there's family history. Maybe yes, maybe no. And it goes back to, maybe we've had this conversation before. It's funny what you might hear in different lectures or even church sermons. I think we maybe talked about this before. In this church sermon, I remember the pastor talking about, what do you think is in his sermon, the number one shoplifted item in stores? No, it's not alcohol. It's a type of treatment for your body. No, and it's something that bothers you if you're sitting down. Starts with an H. It's more common in men than probably women. Hemorrhoids. That's right. No one really wants to talk about hemorrhoids, but no one really wants to address that problem. You're walking up to the checkout counter, and if that's the only thing you're buying, you put it down. And does anyone here work in retail? So what might be going through, who can we pick on in here, over here? Dawson. Here, what would you think if someone you know, there's a box of Preparation H they set on the counter? It's just human nature. Some people might not think anything of it. Other people may hopefully not snort a little bit, but hopefully not. Because I've had this conversation with a certain senior, with him working down there. He says, I really don't care what people buy. My favorite customers are those that set things down, don't say a word, pay for it, and get on their way. So sometimes it's just human nature to, so we're exchanging pleasantries. Person A looks at person B. Person A says, how are you, person B? Really, sometimes the last thing person A wants to know is how person B is doing. It's just social convention. Rather than saying hi, they might say, hi, how are you? Maybe we are concerned about person B. Are we? Okay. Person B, are you concerned about person A? Sure. And now that's always going to be different for other people. Anyway, moving on. Okay? So, certain types of bacteria are going to be more difficult to get rid of than others, whether they form spores or if they have this cell wall. Look what it says. Protects from toxic substances. Okay? And if that is the case, the amoxicillin, penicillin, streptomycin, any type of antibiotic cannot get in there because it's protected from these toxic substances that would be the bacteria. It's not toxic to us, it's toxic to the bacteria. And for the most part, okay, one of the things we'll talk about, gram-negative bacteria actually have 2 cell membranes. Gram-positive only has 1. So if that is the case, which it is, gram-negative bacteria is a little more difficult to treat and get rid of than gram-positive bacteria. But it says not cellulose like in plants. What do you suppose this cellulose does for plants, whether it's trees or whether it's corn late in August? Okay, if that wind is howling about 30 miles an hour, does that tip the corn over? Well, it can if it's maybe more than that, but the corn still stands up straight. Why is that? It's stiff because of the cellulose. Okay, now this polysaccharide, this peptidoglycan, is a very stringent or stiff polysaccharide, just like cellulose. But it's this compound, not cellulose, that gives these little bacteria such rugged cell membranes and cell walls. Okay. So if these bacteria have a capsule, if it's protected from white blood cells, what's that bacteria going to continue to do? Is it just going to sit there and hang out and just feed off yourself? True, but what else are bacteria going to do? They're really going to multiply. That's right. So, which organism is larger, bacteria or viruses? Who thinks bacteria are larger? So then the rest of you would be led to believe that viruses are larger. Okay? Viruses are just genetic material. Okay? So bacteria are much larger. So what viruses do, okay, is inject themselves into a host cell, okay? And if it's just genetic material, it's going to cause that cell to produce more viruses. It doesn't reproduce like that of bacteria where it's chopped in half and chopped in half and chopped in half and chopped in half. In other words, if we have this one desk here, we cut it in half, now we've got 2 desks, okay? Then them 2 desks are cut in half, now we got 4. These 2 desks are cut in half, we got 4. So we went from 1 to 2 to 8, then them 8 go to 16, so you keep doubling every time you go. Bacteria would reproduce at a very high rate, but so can viruses. Once one cell is infected, what did that video say? Once that virus takes a hold of that cell, it reproduces more viruses, and then them viruses do what? Cause the cell to die, then what? Find what? Find another cell, so that one virus now 10, them other 10 viruses go to 10 cells and produce 10 more viruses. Now you're up to 100, and viruses replicate very quickly. The problem with this is now, this is, you got to think about 40 years in the making now. Okay? Human immunodeficiency viruses, which in short is called what? HIV, which leads to autoimmunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. Now, 40 years ago, okay, it was, I would say, in my opinion, that it's going to be a long time before we ever get a handle on this. I didn't even think it would be in my lifetime. One of the ways I like to look at it is, picture we got two keys here. Okay? This one is for this room. You put it in the lock, turns it, you can walk right in. But what's the difference between this key in Ms. Aaron's, Mr. J's, or Mr. Hammer's, or Ms. Luann's? What might they have? So what does that mean about any door in this building? Yeah, that key works in every door. So what happens is you could say, Mr. Hammer, you're a virus. Or you can even say, Mr. Husby, I don't know if he has a key. Mr. Husby, we just called you a virus today. And you might get a hee-hee and a ho-ho out of that. We'll just pretend Mr. Husby has a master key. Maybe yes, maybe no. But my point is, if we wanted to keep administration out because they're a virus, can we keep them out? The answer is no. So this human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, that will go easily into any cell, infect it, because it thinks it's natural to come in. It tricks the cell membrane to allow it to be let in. And like I said, we're talking 40 years ago when people were, this is starting to become more and more common, so what about 82, not quite 40 years ago. So somewhere around the mid-80s is where it's becoming more and more common for people to be diagnosed with HIV. And the problem is, just going back to these keys, it's so easy for what's not supposed to come into a cell that actually can, because it's got a master key. It tricks the cell membrane to come in. And they'll be talking about that here in just a moment. So tomorrow we'll talk about endospores, and we have an early out, and eventually we're going to get to that documentary about the Great Plague. So we'll catch up to you next time.